need
And where
for
are you
that.
located?
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Down here.
Kentucky.
Do you guys consider that the South? What do you?
Oh, yeah. Kentucky, that's the South.
Yeah. See, it's weird because when I talk to different people, I get so many different perspectives on what Kentucky is. Like, some people think it's the Midwest. Some people think it's the South. Some people think, if they're talking from Florida, it's like, oh, up north. And I'm like, I really don't know where I am anymore.
Like if you live in New York, I would say anything below Delaware
Really?
is the South.
That's funny. I actually think I talked to the last person. They're from North Dakota or South Dakota. I can't remember which one now, but yeah, they said they were in the Midwest, and I was like, well, people say we're in the Midwest here in Kentucky, so I don't know where I really am. It's like everybody just, there's so many different regions.
I don't know. I don't handle those landlocked states. None of that shit. Fuck that. Fuck those landlocked states.
I feel like living on the ocean would be really fun.
It's fun unless there's a, what's it?
Hurricane or...
Oh, hurricane, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's fun unless there's a hurricane.
Yeah. I guess when you guys get hurricanes, it's really bad. Those tend to be like some of the worst ones.
The flooding.
Yeah.
Technically, I'm living on an island,
Yeah.
I walk to the water right now. But it's all water you really can't swim in around here.
Oh, really?
It's all chemicals. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's
You're really not
interesting.
supposed to go in the water. But people do, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
So I'm actually right on the Ohio River, and people swim in that, but if you look in it, it's like I would never get in that.
People fish in that water
Yeah.
and then eat the fish. And I'm like, do you realize what you're eating?
Yeah. I don't like to think about it too much, because if I do, I'll start to freak out.
Like GE just put in all of their chemicals in that water. GE just put all the chemicals, and you're just fishing.
Yeah, loving it. I guess, whatever. I guess some people
You know
just
what?
put
You
it
do
out.
what you got to do sometimes. You
Yeah.
do what you got to do. Yeah.
But anyway, I guess we can officially start this thing off with just maybe a little introduction from you, kind of who you are, what you do.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michelle Hammer. I'm a schizophrenic girl living in New York City. I created and founded the clothing and lifestyle brand Schizophrenic.NYC, where I try to start conversations about mental health because, 1 in 4 people has a mental illness, but nobody talks about it because of all the stigma. So the more we talk about it, the less stigma there will be. And that's really my mission. I usually set up with a pop-up shop in New York City, depending on weather. The weather. And usually when I say that I have schizophrenia, the person then tells me either they have a mental illness, a friend of theirs has a mental illness, or a family member of theirs has a mental illness. So my whole thing is, if it's so common, what is with all this stigma? Does that make any sense to you? It doesn't make any sense. Everybody's affected in some way, yet there's so much stigma. That just needs to go away and just be gone. Just go away.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is I think personal fear. A lot of people think it's one thing to say like everybody's affected by cancer and people understand that and it's kind of accepted, and it's like, if I get cancer, I'll probably be physically, or not probably, but potentially could be physically debilitated, or I could die from this. But I think that doesn't draw as much fear as a mental kind of like people playing with understanding what could happen to them mentally. I think that fear is maybe where part of the stigma comes from, to where like just the fear of themselves thinking about it might cause some of that to keep kind of playing on.
Well, the fear is the stigma, honestly. That's where the fear is coming from. It's the fear of the unknown. Really. But if everyone would just like be more open and honest, they would see that it's really not that different. You're really, mental illness has a spectrum just like anything else. So if you're afraid, you're really just stigmatizing yourself. Why would you purposely not get help? You're really just hurting yourself in that sense.
Yeah.
Why live a life in struggles when you don't have to? What's so scary about a label? Like, I like to say that, being diagnosed with schizophrenia was the best thing that ever happened to me because then I could be treated for the right illness. Why would I want to go through my life, living with symptoms when they could be managed?
Absolutely. Yeah. That does make sense. I think it's just, it's that. I think you're right when you say it's the fear is the stigma, because like you said, people could be, living with something that they know is going on within themselves, but they're too afraid to say anything. They could go on and get help, and it's, it could be a completely different life than the one that they are otherwise going to lead when they don't get help. And I think that, that's definitely where the awareness part comes in.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone goes to therapy. Almost like everybody I've known has seen a therapist at some point. It's not that strange to go to therapy. It's not that big a deal to go to therapy. It's not that taboo to go to therapy. It's not that big a deal. And people blow it up like, oh, if I go to therapy, that means I'm crazy. No, it means you're practicing self-care. So get over it and just go. If you need to go, just go.
Yeah,
that's my New Yorker in me, That's how I roll. Like, if you need to go, go. Stop just dilly-dallying around about it. I don't want to hear about it for 2 weeks. Just go.
Yeah, and I think, what do you think, you say it's the, you talk about the kind of maybe awkwardness or something around therapy or getting help. Do you see it going in one direction, like, right, currently, do you see it getting better, getting worse, or do you think it's just kind of stagnant to where, we're not really making progress on helping, the stigma or the fear or whatever you want to call it?
Well, I think now much more people are coming out and saying that they do have a mental illness. I think it's more socially acceptably, available, and you can be more open about it. But I wouldn't say we're at a standstill. I think we're getting somewhere. We're not where we need to be, but we are getting closer to that stage. Because I know a lot more college students are coming out and saying that they live with psychosis because, college is like that, you have to somehow help the student as well. When I went through college and I was struggling things and I was away at hospitals, I didn't really get a lot of help. Nobody was really there trying to help me. I mean, I had a support team, but like the college wasn't really checking up on me or anything. But now, like, if there's better help within just helping younger kids. They're teaching things more in high schools. We're learning more from people with lived experience, less from just the doctors, because it's a lot different when you hear it from somebody with a PhD than when you hear it from someone who actually has the lived experience. You'll hear two completely different stories. So I see it, yes, it's going in the right direction. It's not quite there yet, but just like anything, things take time. And I think eventually we will get somewhere where mental health is very easy to talk about. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I know when I was younger, it was not an easy thing to ever speak about. So that's why I kept my mouth shut for so long, because I didn't really know what was going on, because I wasn't taught really what to look out for.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing too. At what point for you did you start to maybe start seeing those things, or when did they start becoming recognizable, those signs or whatever maybe it was?
Well, I think I'm not sure when I first started getting symptoms, maybe sometime in middle school. But the thing is, like, throughout like high school, I thought my mother was trying to kill me. I thought she was like, trying to sabotage me in my life and my life in some ways. So I go off to college. I think I'm free of her. Things are fine for a while. I'm having a great time. And then those same exact paranoid thoughts I started having about my roommate, my best friend. And that's when I started realizing that, how could I have these exact same thoughts about my roommate? Oh my goodness, my mom was right. It was me the whole time. And that's when I got the epiphany moment where I was like, something's up with me. Let me try to go get help. And, it took a long time, but finally I got to where I need to be. And now I'm living the best life I can possibly live. It's not easy, but it if you try hard enough, and if you, really believe that you can get through it, then it can work.
Yeah, and that I think it's probably different for different, mental illnesses, because physical ailments are certainly different. So I'd assume it is with mental as well. But is there a general point as to where you might see some of these issues in other people start to arise, to where you can say, okay, this is the specific point in their life when I should start watching out, or you know what I'm saying? Like, is there a specific point, or not a specific, but kind of a time frame when that starts to maybe present itself more than others?
I wouldn't say necessarily a specific time frame. Like maybe if something traumatic happens, that can bring on a lot of symptoms, but just seeing changes in behavior, just anything that just looks changes in behavior. But always, like, try to talk to a doctor, talk to the person, your family member. Don't make them feel like they're just a sick person. Just comfort them in some way. Don't be like, I think you're sick. Because if you tell a delusional person they're delusional, they're just going to be like, no, you're delusional. What are you talking about? You can't just tell a paranoid person that they're sick because they're paranoid, and they're going to think, no, you think I'm sick. I'm not sick. There's not a really easy way to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that is, that's a good point. You talk about bringing it up the right way and talking about it the right way. Is there something out there, some way that people can learn how to do that? Like, how should somebody go about figuring out how to approach somebody? Is there some class, or is there some seminar? Like, what is there out there to kind of learn how to do that?
Dude, YouTube is your friend. Go on some YouTube. Check out, just watch a lot of videos of people with mental illness. I would say do that. But like, the right way, the wrong way. I mean, don't accuse people of things. Honest, you don't want to accuse somebody of something. You don't want to say like, hey, I Googled this and it seems like you have this. You're not a doctor from Google University. You don't get your PhD from Google University. But, it's just like, you don't want to attack somebody. You want to make them feel like they're loved.
Absolutely. And I think YouTube is I feel like YouTube has all the answers to life anymore, but
yeah,
I think you have to be careful also, because there's so much information out there. I think it's probably maybe a little bit better in certain areas, as far as what field you're looking at. But I know just in health in general, you could go on social media, or you could go on the internet, and you could pull up information that may be maybe less than helpful sometimes. So that's kind of just why I was curious if there was like a specific, but you just say, go on YouTube and find something that seems legit, that seems, if I think if it makes sense, then it typically is kind of sound or okay to follow in a lot of ways. Just kind of common
definitely.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just very interesting to me, because the whole mental health awareness kind of craze, or whatever you want to call it, the awareness bubble, really started, within the past few years, I would say. What kind of differences have you noticed in the past maybe 5 or so years, just from the average person? Like, has the average person, do you feel, gotten smarter, or are they better at noticing these things? Are they better? Are they less judgmental? Has there really been action to the movement? Is kind of, I guess, what I'm asking.
I would say more people are open about talking about mental health, but there still is a huge suicide rate. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but there's a huge suicide rate, especially in veterans. So 22 veterans kill themselves every single day. So yeah, things are getting better, but things also need to change. Like a lot of kids are killing themselves. A lot of it's the numbers are far too high, and a lot of that just starts with the early intervention. People are always talking about early intervention, but it's hard to do that. It's hard to teach kids about mental health, and it's hard to teach kids in high school and middle school about dealing with their friends and mental health and all that, because like high school is a clusterfuck of mean, horrible. Like watching Mean Girls like to the T, kind of, and it's just not easy sometimes. So I see, yeah, like mental health is getting better as being more of a like let's try to fix the problem, but honestly, it's like, how are we actually fixing the problem? That's really, like, there's a problem, how do we fix? That's what I don't see the answer really happening. How do we fix? Okay, there are nonprofits that do many different things that are trying to be with the parents, some trying to be more with the students. Things are getting better. There will be many things as, time goes on, grants go to nonprofits, things are happening. It just takes time. Like anything else, it takes time. But things are getting better for sure, but it takes time. It just takes time.
The way I kind of see it is like it's become a popular hashtag. A lot of people will be kind of uneducatedly aware, uneducated about what to do, but still aware. So I think, like you said, just moving to the next step of actually taking the action, because mental health is such like a buzzword right now. So, what are we actually, people posting, there's 50 million tweet or, Instagram post about it today, but what are people actually doing other than just putting it, in a hashtag?
Right. That's why we need great advocates, people for young kids to look up to, because I feel like when I was younger, I didn't really have anyone to look up to, like with any mental health issue. So that's why we need to just, be open, speak more, make changes, and just, let's rule the world. Woo!
So do you think that a better approach, and maybe it's not better, it's just different, but do you think the better approach is trying to reach and educate at a younger age, or trying to educate maybe the parents of the kids that are at the younger age? Which, I mean, maybe it's both, but do you feel like one has a better effect?
Well, what I say to that is, what I learned in school about depression was, depression is when you're sad for 2 weeks or more. What does that mean? I mean, I was depressed in school, but what? One day I smiled at a joke, so I wasn't depressed that week? That's not 2 weeks or more? Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? So, like, on my health class, we learned about drugs, we learned about sex. Oh, and then we learned about mental health. Like, that's no. I mean, it's not good to do drugs. I agree with that. Hard drugs, not a good thing. Sex, that can lead to, unwanted pregnancy and STDs. I get it. And then why was mental health put on the back burner? Yeah. Why was that like, oh yeah, mental health, you can like, you can be sad for 2 weeks or more, and it's really important not to be, sad. There's a lot of different mental illnesses, blah, 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 and don't do drugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Use a condom. Mental illnesses, use a condom. I mean, I didn't learn anything about mental illness, so I didn't know how to look for it in me, because I only knew to be sad for 2 weeks or more.
Yeah.
I mean, do they still say that in school? Because that is the dumbest thing I've ever fucking heard.
I think I actually remember hearing the 2 weeks thing as well. So, yeah.
But what does that mean?
Yeah, it's not very well defined. I think that's a very important point. It's not like it doesn't give you a very good roadmap of what you should be looking for in yourself or in somebody else.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. I mean, the one thing that does stand out for me from high school is that I'm in ninth grade, and my bio teacher is making a little joke before class, and he goes, "I'm not paranoid, just everybody hates me," and he's making a joke, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think that all the time, but he's making a joke out of it, and I was like, wait a minute, nah, he's just joking. But everybody hates me, but he's just kidding though. I'm not paranoid. Everyone really does hate me. He's just joking, though. Not me. Not for me. For me, it's true. For me, it's true. I remember that happening.
In the moment, did you kind of feel like a switch being turned, like a mental like awareness part, or did you feel just like was it maybe like, a little after?
It was kind of like, wait a minute, that's a paranoid thing to think? No, I'm not paranoid. no, he's making a joke. Everybody really does hate me. Because I was like, I'm not paranoid. For me, it's true.
Yeah.
So stupid.
It was just
I think
even
back to
more.
some of those things I used to think, like, I used to think the craziest things. And then I realized I still sometimes think the craziest things, and I have to call people and I'm like, hey, did this happen? And they're like, what are you talking about? Delusions.
So it was just at that point, it was just kind of even a little bit even more confusing, because what you read in the books and then what you were feeling were just two completely different, or one was so vague that you really just couldn't even begin to, it couldn't even be useful. It was just, good luck, kind of, in a way. It's like good luck trying to figure this thing out.
Right, seriously, I know. A school with thousands of people, you just get lost in the crowd.
Right. Do you think that people in high school, I think I'm envisioning kind of the movie Breakfast Club, how, like, you have the different personalities and kind of the stereotypes.
Uh-huh.
But at the end of the day, kind of everybody was going through the same thing in their own different way, in their own different worlds. Do you feel like that's something that continues past high school, that people are still dealing with things that are just going unresolved, and they're just boiling over and causing, either in their own mind or outburst outside, in the outside world? Do you think that just plays a role in kind of showing the unawareness and the stuff that isn't being helped early on?
I don't really, I'm not sure if stuff from like high school is really causing like the mental illness stuff. I know they always say like, it'll pop out at like age 20. Something I think about that is that like at age 20, you're kind of like, you're not under mommy's, comfort anymore. You're more of an adult. So maybe it's like that adult kind of a deal where you're like, I can't live as an adult. Oh God, why can't I do an adult thing? And then it's like, oh, your mental illness is popping up because all of a sudden you have all these stressors and all these things you have to do, and you realize that you can't do them yourself. And then it's like, oh, I can't do it. Why not? And then you find out you have a mental illness, which was brought on either by the stress or just it was always there, but you never had to do everything for yourself all the time. So it didn't really surface like that. So I don't really know if it's like things from the past. Trauma and stuff can cause a mental illness, but you never really know what the initial spark of it could be, because it could be brought on by many different things. But I do think a lot of it has to do, when they say like age 20, when I hear that, I really do think it's because, oh, welcome to the adult world. Can you really handle it? Yes or no?
Gotcha. Yeah, I never kind of put those two together, really, thinking on those lines. I have heard kind of the 20 years old thing is a big number, but I guess it does make sense. Do you think if somebody, I guess like you said, it's just different for everybody, so it's hard to say this, but if someone who had the stressors kind of maybe bring out something that they hadn't experienced before, do you think if someone would go their whole life without, like, not that this would even be possible, without a stressor, do you think that would kind of halt that from that mental illness or whatever it may be from presenting itself?
I think that's possible. Yeah, definitely.
It's very interesting. It's because if you kind of compare it to something like cancer, you can definitely be predisposed to it, and then be exposed to something, the sun, or be exposed to, who knows with all the stuff we have going on in today's age. But it's kind of in a way that's kind of how I'm kind of in my head relating it, is it just takes, you might have that predisposition for it, or it might be kind of in the shadows, but it doesn't kind of present itself until you have that other factor added in. It's not, you need that 2 + 2 to equal 4 in a way.
Right, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So, kind of going to the the identification, because I think a lot of people don't, especially kind of when you're younger too, you're just kind of living in your own head. You know, it's like everybody else is just kind of a part of this world it's your world. And so how, especially maybe from a younger age, would someone be able to self-identify something that is not going so well?
I would say the thoughts, whatever the thoughts are, if they're intrusive, like they won't stop, or if the thoughts are dangerous at all, like telling you to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, those would be the biggest things.
So is that a fairly common kind of thread for a broad spectrum of mental illness?
Yeah.
I want to kind of do with something like this podcast is just to give people like the most actionable and helpful benefit, because people, like we talked about earlier, people are aware. It's just giving them the information to actually do something about it for themselves, do something about it for people that they know or may, you know, come in contact with. I think that's just one of the biggest things that I really would like to accomplish, because my main focus is the physical side of things. And, you know, I have an educational background in that, so I kind of am more aware of, oh, you know, if you, and I think it's more obvious, oh, if you start gaining weight, you need to work out. You know, it's just so much more obvious on a physical plane, because oftentimes you have those markers, at least. And even if you don't, you can go to the doctor and you actually can, you know, oh, you know, what's my cholesterol? What's my whatever? You know, but it's harder, I think, for the mental side of things, because it's just, I don't know if it's just so new or if it's just harder to get those readings, you know, whatever those numbers might be, to be like, oh, this number says I might have to take care of something.
Yeah, I mean, until we start treating mental illness like a broken foot, you know, we haven't quite arrived.
Getting to the outside perspective, what should somebody look for in maybe a friend, maybe who seems like they're just not acting the way they normally act? What should somebody look for other than just that initial, like, oh, something must be up, like helping somebody kind of with some signs or symptoms?
In a friend, like noticing
symptoms?
You know, like isolation, just acting different, maybe being, if your friend is accusing you of things that, you know, never happened, any kind of like paranoid behavior, anything like that, just not acting like they used to act, you know, or if they seem busy in their head, talking to themselves. Say all those are really big signs, but
gotcha. So
the friend has to realize it for themselves. Really.
Right. So it's kind of like a personal. Is it kind of like a personal acceptance before? I cannot. The thing that comes to my head is like when people want to quit doing, you know, drugs or quit drinking alcohol. It's like they have to first of all accept, hey, I have a problem. Is that kind of the same thing? Like, hey, I have something, you know, mentally. And then you have to kind of move on from that. You can't really skip that stage.
I've in my opinion, yeah, you have to accept that something's up, and then you can go about fixing it.
Gotcha. For somebody that does, you know, have that initial acceptance, what's something that, I mean, is the next step like going to talk to somebody? What would really be the next step in what they would want to do?
Going to talk to somebody and seeing what happens there. Seeing a therapist, seeing if the therapist wants you to see a psychiatrist. What's
really the difference going from a therapist to a psychiatrist? What's kind of the benefit of taking that step?
Well, the psychiatrist is who prescribes the medication. So that's really the difference. Therapist is more chit-chatty chat. Psychiatrist is more just like, okay, well, how does this medication make you feel? How are you feeling with this? Fix this, things like that.
Okay, so your typical psychiatrist is kind of just like facilitating that aspect. Are they also, so would you go see a psychiatrist and a therapist? Would you keep your therapist to kind of?
Usually you do, yeah.
Okay. So for somebody that would go see a therapist, are there different, I mean, I know there's like marriage therapist and everything like that, but dealing with like mental illness, are there specific mental illness therapists within each kind of mental illness block?
Not necessarily, but when you have a variety of therapists, you can say, have you ever, dealt with someone with this illness or that illness or this kind of thing or that kind of thing? And, sometimes they specialize in certain things. So you can just find one that has maybe dealt with someone with the issues that you've been dealing with. And yeah, there's many different kinds of therapists. So you can just find one that has one that deals with what you have or whatever, and just somebody that you click with, really. It's really just who you click with and who you feel comfortable talking to, honestly. Because if you don't feel comfortable talking to the person, nothing's going to get really resolved, Because it might be like, oh, well, this therapist went to this school and did that and did this and that, and they have all these accolades, but then you hate them. What's the point? Having a degree doesn't make you a good therapist or maybe make you like the person more. You actually have to like the person to feel comfortable talking to them.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to talk. I don't want to talk to a 75-year-old man ever. Like, no, thank you. Done with that. No, like that's not someone I feel comfortable talking to, even if they went to Harvard. Like, I don't care.
Are there like, so like support groups you can talk to people with similar experiences? Is there something like that out there for someone?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's tons of support groups you can find.
Gotcha. And, I know with COVID, those in-person, everything in person has kind of been put on restriction. But have you noticed any changes with, because of quarantine in mental health, just where you are and with people
Well, I mean, everyone's doing Zoom therapy now, so it's just on Zoom. But, I mean, it's pretty much the only difference is that everybody's on Zoom. But I know a lot of people are in relationships trying to do couples therapy because everyone's going nuts during quarantine. I
mean, are there really any benefits to being in person over a Zoom or over a FaceTime meeting?
I think it's whatever, and it makes no difference to me, honestly.
So
however, if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, just kind of
personal. It really depends on the person.
I think some people might even potentially feel more comfortable over a Zoom, where that might not have been an option in the past, or at least as open of an option in the past.
Yeah, I think it is a little more comfortable over Zoom because then you're in your own space. You don't have to deal with like getting somewhere, and then you feel like you're in like an office on a couch. Everybody knows that like lay down on a couch thing. That's not even a real thing. Like you can if you want to, but like you don't lay down on a couch and like that ain't real. It's just a stupid movie thing. Nobody lays down like that. Okay, just saying. It's really not a big deal. You go there, you say hello, you sit down, and then they do like preliminary stuff where they ask you a bunch of questions. And then once you get past all of that, then they just chit chat. You really just have a chat. That's all it is. And maybe if you're anxious about something, you talk about it, and then you're like not anxious anymore. That's all it is. You just talk about your life. And this person is interested in hearing your stories. It's nothing like out of the ordinary. It's nothing ridiculous. You really just talk about your life with somebody and maybe things that bother you that you don't want to tell anyone else because you might think that they're dumb things to say. But there's somebody listening that'll be like, okay, well, what are you gonna, yeah. And they kind of always agree with you or they always lead you in some sort of direction. It's not like, oh, I have a therapy appointment. What are we going to do today? It's really just like chit chat. Chitty chat. That's all it is. Chit chat.
I mean, is there times when you could just go in and be like, I really don't even know what to say today. I'll just like, that kind of thing?
I mean, that happens, but I mean, just talk about something.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think it is becoming a little bit more acceptable and a little, people are utilizing it, but and I think it's different too on, based on the community. I think it might be a little bit different feel depending on where you are. And I think that could be hard too, coming from maybe a smaller community. It could be, could be something that is less accepted, less available even.
Yeah, that's why health insurance needs to change as well. A lot of health insurance will only cover 10 visits a year. Who is that helping? Nobody. Come on, health insurance. Come on. Come on.
Yeah, and it's funny because the health insurance for, I think it's like cardiac rehab, only covers a certain, like a small number as well. It's like, what is health insurance actually out here doing and providing for us? It's very minimalistic.
Seriously.
So getting to what you started, getting to what you actually, do, what is your involvement? Like, what do you actually do? So just kind of getting a little bit deeper into it.
Okay. Well, I work as a mental health advocate, and I have the clothing line Schizophrenic.NYC. We have shirts like "Don't be paranoid, you look great," "Define normal," "It's not a delusion, you are incredible." There's "I'm mentally ill and I don't kill," and also plays off the Rorschach test. The idea is, that plain ink blot test that gets tested on people, it's a recognizable thing for psychiatry, but it's usually plain black. And when you get a schizophrenic person, when they just look at that test or go through life, they see things from a different perspective. So what I did is I took that test, I switched up the patterns and the colors, so now everyone's forced to look at it from a different perspective, getting people to think differently and start a discussion, because along through discussion, can you try to reduce or end stigma? So I just have a variety of things like those shirts, but I have pins, button, artwork, coasters, necklaces, pillboxes, all these fun things. And I sell them all on my website, Schizophrenic.NYC, and I usually have a pop-up shop in New York City as long as the weather is nice and everything. And I just sell the merchandise, and I meet amazing, amazing people, and I love it, honestly. It's so much fun. And I have given speeches around the country, around the world. Now I do a lot of Zoom ones.
Yeah. How did that start, and when did that start? How long ago did you start that up?
I started it a bunch of years ago when people really weren't out about having schizophrenia or most mental illnesses. So it was like it kind of got a bunch of attention, but it's just been a really fun ride. I've met amazing people, and it's been really, really cool. I really enjoyed it.
So where do you typically go? Is it like a business you talk to? Is it like who's your crowd typically?
My people who show up at my pop-ups, it's just
when you talk, like when you go and talk to different people, like
when I go and talk to different people, sometimes it's colleges, sometimes it's different nonprofit around the area. It's just anything, honestly.
That's pretty cool to have both of those components there, because I think fashion is such a big way for a movement to start and for it to kind of keep going and carry on. Is that like a weekly thing, an everyday thing? Like, when do you do those pop-ups?
I try to do Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Depends on the weather, things like that. But I always sell online all the time. So just got to follow me on Instagram, Schizophrenic.NYC, to find out if I'm popping up that day. But yeah, I do love popping up. I've missed it. 2020, I couldn't pop up at all, really. I think I did twice. But it's so much fun. It's just fun to speak to people. It's like my favorite thing is just to blab with just nonsense. And so there's always like some ridiculous thing that happens that day. There's always like something that goes on. It's just funny. It's just fun. It's just, you never know. You never know who you're going to meet. I once saw Jason Segel and Jesse Eisenberg walking down the street. And I was like, "Hi, Jesse." And he laughed in my face.
Wow. That's insane.
They didn't stop at my pop-up, no.
That's
okay, though.
Yeah. But do you ever get people like kind of like debating with you on certain things at your pop-ups?
They ask me if it's a joke. Is this a joke? And I'm like, no. Then they tell them they're like, I have schizophrenia. They're like, oh, you're very brave, and then walk away. So some people think I'm like making a mockery or something. Like, they can just go away. Like, If you're just gonna like yell at me and say that I'm doing something wrong and then not talk to me about it, like just go away. Like you're just gonna judge me before you get to know me. Like you are perpetuating stigma, so stop. Just stop.
What typically do you speak about? Like,
I just talk about growing up with schizophrenia, realizing I had it in college, support teams, like symptoms now, my business, how I run it, everything like that. A lot of what we've been talking about now.
I mean, if somebody isn't ready or isn't willing yet to make that step themselves, I mean, is there absolutely anything that they can do to just provide information to like what really is that step you take when maybe you've tried the things that people say, oh, try this, try that?
You just got to be a friend. You just got to be a support team. That's really all you got to do. Just support them no matter what. Support them.
Gotcha. So it's just accepting that they're gonna. It takes it's in their own time that potentially comes around. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, man, I just think it's definitely an uphill battle. People are, I think, starting to talk about it more, starting to be more aware about it. But yeah, taking actionable steps is definitely necessary, I think. I really appreciate you coming on and just sharing a little bit about your experience and what you're doing and just helping people maybe take something away from it. I think that's really my goal.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.